Greetings from Seward County again here, and we are again at the Parish Hall at St. Andrews here on the corner of Hillcrest and 6th Street in Seward, Nebraska. It is spring of 2016. This is the second in our series of Tallgrass Prairie stories, and we are just delighted to have Virginia Cattle with us today. And again, Virginia, I start these off just terribly because I ask folks how old they are because I think it's so cool. Can you tell us how old you are today?
Yes, I'm 95.
See, 95 years old. What year were you born?
In 1920.
Cool, cool. And where were you born?
In Seward.
In Seward.
Delivered by the doctor that delivered my husband also,
Cool.
which is very unusual.
And where did you grow up then? And where did you go to school?
Here in Seward. Now, for a short time, my father had an office in Tamora, and everybody chuckles when you say Tamora. And Mother and Dad both came from a city. But when they went to Tamora, it had 2 churches, a dry goods, a bank, a barber, a large lumber yard, 2 elevators, a train station, a telephone office, a rooming house, and 2 churches. And it was a wonderful opportunity for a young doctor, and that is where they came from, Michigan. And I was born in Seward and lived there for about 5 years.
And lived in Tamora.
And then I started school here.
In school here. And that's kind of remarkable because now Tamora is unincorporated.
Oh,
And it's disappeared.
Yes.
And when I read some of the histories of Seward County,
Yes.
that happened to like several of our
Yes,
towns.
it did.
So, but Tamora had really gotten established. When you went to grade school, when you started to grade school in Seward, where was the building? What part of Seward?
It was the old building that is behind the, it was just south of what was the high school building.
Of the big
that
high
old
school.
building right
Oh, I love that. Yeah,
Yes.
and it was just taken down.
there. Yes.
That's a good way to put that.
Yes.
Okay.
And then
good.
moved over to the grade school, which was just east of that,
Okay.
and then high school there.
So you are a Seward girl,
Yes.
aren't you? And what was your maiden name?
Clark, with
Clark.
an E.
Okay, wonderful.
With an E.
Okay. Do you know that I thought that your dear granddaughter was a little boy, and I thought that she was named after Clark Colderman for at least a half a year.
Clark Colderman said that that's what it was.
he would go with that. So, and then you have to tell me, what lineage were you? What were you folks, German? Were you
Scotch, Irish, English, Dutch.
Scotch, Irish, English, Dutch. Do you know that Marilyn Schulz, that's her lineage a little bit too. So, but she didn't have the English in there. And so there must have been Pennsylvania Dutch? A little
No,
bit?
from Holland.
From Holland.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
wonderful. And so there's some English in there, Scotch, Irish,
From my
English.
grandmother on the mother's side. And my father's father came from Ireland. He was a doctor and studied in England and then came to this country.
Wonderful, wonderful. And then, who did you marry? How did you meet? When were you married? Who was this guy?
My family was invited to the Cattle family for dinner. And I was 5 and John was 7. And that's when we met.
Now, what did the Cattle family do?
They had the bank.
They had the bank. And I was thinking about that. Was he the first generation of the Cattle family to have the bank here?
No, no.
It goes back another generation.
Yes, yes.
Okay,
2 brothers came from England,
okay.
and one started the cattle bank. John's mother came from another side, visited in Seward with her grandparents, the Joneses, and met John's father. So she was from the Jones side, and she married into the cattle family. So both sides, both families had the 2 banks.
Had the bank. Wonderful. Okay. And so they were in banking, so they were really well rooted in building the Seward community, weren't they?
Yes.
Yes. So About what year was this? That you met? Well, that you got to know him, like when you grew up a little bit then and you started, did you date?
The first date I ever had was with John.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And about what year was that in?
Well, I was 16, so that would be 1926.
Yes.
36.
19,
No,
1936? Okay, 36.
Yeah.
What was going on in Seward in 1936? That would be right in the Depression era, wasn't it?
Very, very much.
Mm-hmm.
It was, we started out with a large class and lost at least a third of it for children who could not afford to go to
Just
school.
could not.
We had
afford.
did not have a annual. We were not allowed to have an annual. We did not have caps and gowns,
Right.
and so many dropped out. It
They
was,
just
it was
had
a
to.
very sad time.
Right.
Very sad time.
Right. Because as I read the histories of Seward County, it has been from the very beginning a struggle, hasn't it, financially,
Yes.
because of the weather. The weather and then the outside conditions and the rest of the world. Sometimes we were kind of cushioned, but sometimes with the weather we got the full brunt of it. Yeah.
Starting in the third grade was when the suicide started, and that
Really?
was dreadful. That was the first suicide that I'd never, my third grade
That you
teacher,
heard about. Yeah.
husband, and then it was just one after the other. And that was a terrible time.
Because it was just too
They were
much.
losing their farms, they
Right.
were losing their jobs, and people couldn't pay their bills, and it was,
Sometimes they just felt there was no
Yeah,
alternative. Right, right. And then you and John were married. Did you have a big wedding?
it was supposed to have been, but he was in the army, and they said that all orders had been, may I go back to telling that Mother and I were invited to his folks for Sunday dinner. John was in North Carolina in the army. My invitations were all ready to be mailed the next day. We were sitting there, and all of a sudden John's father went like this, and he said, Pearl Harbor has just been struck. All military leaves have been canceled. So we didn't know whether to send the invitations or not. But being young, and I said, let's just go ahead and send them.
Optimistic.
And so John did get permission to come home, but many of our guests could not come because they were in the army.
In the army. So a good percentage of the community members, they joined the army.
Yes.
They started.
Well, and his friends from college, you know, they were in the army.
Right.
And so it was a small church wedding.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And so, and that was, so he served in the U.S. Army at the very beginning of World War II then.
Yes.
And did he serve in the European theater or in the Pacific?
He was in the invasion of Africa first,
Okay.
and then the invasion of Sicily, and then was trained in England, and then was in the invasion of Normandy, and then went through the Battle of the Bulge, and was gone 3 years.
Okay, okay. My dad was in the Battle of the Bulge also.
Yes.
Yes. When he was overseas, and I can remember, like my dad, I think was overseas for 3 to 4 years. And you didn't have a cell phone, did you?
No.
You couldn't get on the
I never
internet.
did talk to him, not
Right.
even once.
Right, right. And you had to wait for those letters.
Yes.
How many times did those letters come home?
Oh, very well. the
Pretty
letters.
regular?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No. But he was a battery commander, so when his men were killed, he had to write letters to the
letters.
parents.
Yeah.
And,
It's a life-changing experience.
yes, it
That-
was.
yes.
But I lived with my mother, and my father was in the service, and she was a great one. And she also worked for the Red Cross at the courthouse and was chairman for all the bandages,
Oh, okay.
and went around to all the towns in the county. And then on odd days, she taught knitting at the at the Civic Center. And so she was involved, had to wear a uniform and everything, so she also served.
At the Civic Center, we are so fortunate in Seward, Nebraska to have our magnificent Civic Center. Was that a different building?
No?
Was it built
No.
in 1930 or 35 or in there in 40?
And no, it was there. It was
It
there.
was there, okay,
Yeah.
the very beginning of it, okay, all righty. And then I want to kind of go back, and I want to kind of see, what can you remember from that time? What would have been a song? Did you listen to songs on the radio?
The Big Band era.
Did you? Did you
Yeah.
really?
Yeah, all of the, and that was, those
Did
were
you
the
like
songs.
Glenn Miller?
Oh, yes.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh,
Yeah,
yes.
and when we were at the university, that was the thing.
Okay,
was the Big Band.
okay, okay. And of course then, I can well imagine what might have been a frightening thought to you, or maybe can you remember something kind of just plain silly that you girls, or at the university, you know, or at home or something that kind of
Well-
struck you? You know, you had to ration a lot.
Well, going a little further than university, when I was a new Army wife, I was
Okay.
the youngest one. I was the youngest Army wife. And I was given a manual on what the Army wife should do. You had
Okay.
calling cards. You went to call on your commanding officer, but you were not to stay longer than 30 minutes. And all these, and I loved it, you know. And then there was a formal night at the club, and I was, you know, this was all new to me. So a girl from Boston said, I would like to have a coffee, and I'd like to have you come.
Okay.
And so I went to her apartment, and she said, now we're going to go around the room and tell where we met our husbands. And you all know that I am Hildegard. And I want you to know that I met Bill at the opera. And I'm from Boston.
All right.
So
then.
it got around to Virginia, the young one, and I said, well, I'm Virginia Cattle, and I'm from Nebraska. And she looked at me, and I said, and she said, but how long have you known John? And I said, since I was 5 and he was 7, and she said, oh, how very dull.
Well, we need to talk to her a little bit. I mean, does she know that you are the soul of America when you're from Nebraska? So, my goodness, I can't believe that.
And then at the end of the coffee, she said, I have a question for you. Do you have any trees in Nebraska?
Right, right. And you know what? About 40 years later, they still wonder the same things, don't they, about our Nebraska? How do you think the war impacted Seward County? You got through the Depression, and then you were thrust right into World War II. How do you think it impacted?
Well, I thought that all differences were lost, and I thought it made a bond. You didn't care what church anybody went to. You didn't care what their party was. It had a bond. You had to work together because it was such a trying, tense time.
And it had to be so frightening.
And the mailman would deliver a letter, and if it had a black rim around it, you know, it was a death notice. And you'd hold your breath every day when the mail would come. Just things like that.
Certainly.
You know.
So everybody did kind of feel like they were in it
Everybody worked
together.
together. Everybody.
Isn't that wonderful? Then, when John came home, then we learned that he was in banking. He always was in finance, and he came home. And did he immediately just go down to the bank and go to work then?
Yes.
When he was done,
Mm-hmm.
did he have kind of a tough time readjusting, or
If he did, he didn't talk
he
about it.
just kept it to
He didn't
himself?
talk much about, about the,
The World War
about-
II vets never
No.
did they?
No, but it was my mother that was the backbone of all of us, because I lived with her. My father was in the service, and she's the one who took me to the hospital to have my baby, and I lived with her till till the child was 2.5 years old.
Oh, my stars.
I lived
Right.
with mother. And so she was the strong one.
Okay.
I think Becky will attest to that. Very strong
Okay.
person. And she helped me through all that. But her husband and then my brother was in the service too.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Really?
And she missed his wedding because of a Jewish holiday. And she was in North Carolina to drive me home, and she wanted to go to his wedding in Pennsylvania. We took her to the station, and all the windows were hanging out with these boys, all Jew boys going home for the Jewish holiday. And they said they
Just
wouldn't let her
no
on the train, so she missed my brother's wedding.
Okay.
So those things all were part of the
See, and
what you did during the war.
they were part of what was
They
taking
part
place.
of the
It's history.
yeah,
It
they
is.
were.
Yes. Then I'd like to, when he got home and you guys, you had to settle down and you had to make a home then. Can you remember, like, I've just been in Seward for 20 some years, and the business district just changed so drastically. What were some of, I bet there were more businesses in Seward, and it was probably a little bit more self-sustaining. What were some of them?
Much more. You know where the old library is?
Mm-hmm.
That was very muchly used. Back of it was the YMCA, where all the boys went in the wintertime to work out. And that was the hub of activity for young fellows to work there. And then where the Helmix is, was Berger Auto Park. Then coming this way, there was a business in there. Then there was a beauty shop. And at that time, it went, whether you had your hair colored, cut, a perm, you were in a booth with a curtain.
You know, that's not such a bad idea. You know what? Then we come up the street, and I remember hearing, and I would love to have a little time to study this, about Hyman's or Hierman's? Hyman's
Yes.
establishment. And like somebody said, they sold beer in one corner and ice cream in another corner.
And penny candy in the windows.
Oh my stars.
Yeah,
And was it a department store? Or?
No, it was just a bar.
Oh, for
And it was,
heaven's sakes.
you know, and then it just started to decay and cave in, and the people died and wanted to get rid of it, and so that's where our bank is now.
Oh, I forgot that.
And
Oh,
then
sure.
where, right back of our bank was a department store and
Oh,
a
really?
jewelry store. A jewelry
Really?
store,
Okay.
yeah.
And-
And then across the street, we had two theaters. There was a lyric theater, and then on the corner that is now an exercise was the Goner Furniture, and in the back was a mortuary.
Okay.
And then across the street where Et Cetera is was Sir Dry Goods.
Okay.
And Mother had me in another city sometime, and I met these people, and I asked them, do you have a Sir Dry Goods?
Oh, well, sure, they should.
Really right, but you know. And then Graff's Clothing,
Okay.
and then Cooper Drug,
Oh my.
and then the shoe store, Kroger's
Kroger's
shoe
shoe-
store, Curry Brothers,
Uh-huh.
then another drugstore, and then on the corner was a hardware store with telephone company upstairs.
Isn't it kind of wonderful? Now, let's go back and let's touch on two of them. Kroger's shoe store was in business in Seward
Yes,
for 125 years at
Yes.
least.
until the new store came,
Mm-hmm.
to the new jewelry store.
Oh, yes. And then if we go back 2 stores, there was another one that was, oh, I know, Graff
Graff
Clothing. And he was quite a gentleman, wasn't he? And
Yes,
he went
yes.
over to England and bought
Yes.
clothes and,
And he wore a derby and a cane and pretended to be a dignitary, and people were taking his pictures all along the way.
wonderful.
Yes.
He knew how to do it, didn't
Yeah,
he?
he did.
That's kind of wonderful. And it was a men's clothing store.
Yes.
Okay.
And then we had a wonderful Ben Franklin store.
Yes.
a wonderful Ben Franklin.
Yeah.
And then gas furniture, we made lovely furniture with where the floral shop is.
Okay.
And then where the other store is was once a mortuary.
Okay, okay. The gas furniture, are they the ones that sometimes, and every once in a while you'll find them around, they made little stools?
Yes, yes.
And little scissor
Little chairs,
holders?
yes,
Yes,
yes.
that's pretty. See, it's important that we know
And then
this
the
stuff.
next in the corner was Goner Grocery.
Those goners,
Yeah, Goner.
yeah. Well, I'm enjoying their house, yeah. So and I wonder,
But that was a cousin.
okay, okay.
And then across the street, Herpelsheimer's was there then. And then Geeson's was across the street, Geeson's Cleaners.
Okay.
And a
then Don
photography shop.
Miller took over Geeson's,
Yes, he
right?
did, yes.
Okay, all right.
And we had a penny store, a quite a sizable penny store.
J.C. Penney's.
Yes, J.C. Penney.
And these were the histories of our small towns, weren't they?
And bakery,
Yes,
had a bakery.
yeah, yeah.
And a large hotel.
Oh, that's right, the Windsor Hotel.
Windsor Hotel. And for the first year, that's where my father lived, until he went back and got married. And he lived at the Windsor Hotel. And the family that ran it lived there.
Okay.
And the dining room was open to the public. Anybody could go.
And that's how they did hotels,
Yes.
isn't it? Yes. Was it elegant?
No, but it was very nice. It was
Okay.
not elegant, but it was
Okay.
very nice. Very
Okay.
nice.
All right, all right.
And the Rivoli Theater was there.
And we're so fortunate to still have
And
that going.
the post office and,
Yeah.
you know.
I always look at our post office building. Was there a different post office building earlier?
Not that I remember.
Because this one looks kind of modern,
It
actually.
does.
Yeah, and so I wondered if there was.
There may have been, but I don't remember.
Okay, okay. What kind of a car did you guys drive?
John's dad's old Dodge Coupe. When we first got married, that's what we had for some
Okay,
time. And then
okay.
we had a Ford.
Okay, okay.
See, cars were hard to get.
Well, I never.
You could
Of
not,
course, right.
they were almost impossible to
Right.
buy. So
Right.
he bought his dad's old Dodge Coupe, that's what we had for some time.
Can you remember what year that was?
The car? No, I don't. I
A
don't know.
Dodge Coupe, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, all right,
And then our first car was a Ford.
okay. I think that I'm getting about to the end of the questions that I thought of here. And we have a few folks here joining us here tonight. Is there any other questions that anybody might have for Virginia? Did you live, when you first got married, where did you live? What kind of a house did you live in?
We moved to the country.
Okay, is that north of town out here on
Yeah.
Highway 15? Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
And it was very exciting. It had a fireplace, but it was full of bird's nests. And so that was the first job, to get the bird's nest out of there.
Okay,
And John learned to paper, and he did the papering, and we worked on it, and we loved it. We lived there for 10 years.
did you? Did you have any animals out in the barn?
Oh, yes, he and his father raised purebred bacon hogs.
Okay, all right. And then where did you market those? How did he sell those? Did you have a little livestock yard here in town, or did you take them into
No,
Omaha? on
his
the train?
dad took care of that. I have no idea.
Okay.
But Becky raised ducks, and she and her brother had banty chickens, and we had
I
the
have
eggs.
to think a little bit about Becky doing the egg chores. Yeah.
And we had horse and cows.
A horse and cows.
But her ducks were really cute, and the banties, they were pets as well as
Oh,
furnishing.
certainly.
And then we had a huge garden, and then
Wonderful.
John went to banking school too while he was working in the bank. And,
Okay. So you're
we were
busy.
busy.
And we lived at the bottom of a hill, so everybody ran out of gas and would coast down to our house for gas.
Oh, dear. And see, I forget about that too, that some of the folks that we've talked to have talked about, you know, everything was rationed, and they're rationed, however, and so they would coast down the hills almost on purpose, and then put in the clutch and start in again, and come back up. So, but every once in a while they just didn't make it. Huh?
Well, the only thing, Mother and I both had ration stamps, you know,
Okay.
and we managed well. The only thing that I didn't like, but you never complained about anything. That was one thing that we did not do, was ever complain.
You shouldn't
And
complain
we
about
would buy these packets with a capsule in it that you would break and squeeze it to make it look like butter.
it. Yes.
And that was
yes.
not
That was
very appetizing, but you
Right.
know.
You just did it.
And,
Yeah.
but we managed.
Yeah. I think that's all the questions that I have right now. I'm sure I'll wish that I had asked some more, so I thank you so much for your
Well,
time.
thank you for having me.
Yeah, so this was just great. And we are getting this, we're gonna put this out on the internet. You're gonna be famous now. And then, and then we are going to continue with our interviews this summer. And because I think it's so important that we save some of these stories. This is our history. So thank you so much.
You're most welcome.
All right. All right. And you said in the summertime, we're going to add this a little bit because I had just mentioned that we had visited last week with Marilyn and Pee Wee Schulz, and her history, she had learned most of her dad's history from other folks because he had died so young. But part of it was that they had the Earl Smiley Lily Farm.
Yes.
And you said,
Artesian wells. And every spring I went with Mother and we picked up these, about this big, goldfish, and then gorgeous lilies. And Mother had a lily pond and had the lilies floating and then the fish in there. And every year we got them down from Smiley's.
okay. What else went on out there? Was there still ever a swimming pond out
Yes.
there?
Swimming pool, yes.
Did anybody that you knew, did they go out and go swimming there?
I think they did. I think they did. I think it was a public pool though.
Okay.
But it was quite a thriving community
Okay.
at its time, and the artesian wells were very well known.
All around, okay. Okay, thank you.